Hello, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thank you for joining me for this IPA talk. And this one is rather special, actually, because for this IPA talk, I just happen to have my dad with me, Tom Leahy, who is a longtime educational leader, but I guess now for the last 10 plus years, you've been working over at the School Board Association in charge of executive searches there, Dad. And so with your work there, and because we try to be supportive of the job search process, thought it would be fun to have you come in and talk with me a little bit about that. That's obviously something that we support here with school leaders that are looking to make moves, and we'll help with resume reviews and contract well, not necessarily negotiations, but reviewing contracts and some other things. Brian takes care of that. But I think a special note, since you're here with me, this is year 50 for you in the business, right?
Education.
That's
yes.
right. So just real quick, track me through. What are all the steps that you
I've
take?
been a teacher 6.5 years. I taught band teacher and choral music. I've been a principal for 14.5 years in a couple of spots, and then a superintendent for 14 years. Last was retired in 2008 from Quincy Public Schools, and then since then for 15 years I've been doing IASB executive search work, and I'm the director of the department currently. So yes, it's if you add it up, it's my 50th.
Yeah,
and it's your mother and mine 50th anniversary in July.
That's right. And I'm been here for almost 49 of it. So here we go. Yeah, true. You bet. Well, so let's just talk a little bit about that, Dad. I mean, you've had a great career. Named Illinois Superintendent of the Year, back 2006?
Right.
Yes, done that. Also had served as one of the past presidents of the Illinois Association of School Administrators, which of course is our good friends over at the Superintendents Association, led now by a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Brent Clark, the executive director there. But so, Dad, you were my principal for a long period of time there for 11 years of my life, I guess it was, through 10 years, first through 10th grade there in Griggsville, Illinois. But you've seen a few things over time. So what are you seeing as some of the most significant changes in the business during your time of leadership?
Well, I think just in life, it's the technology that we have now.
Yeah.
When I was applying for positions, it was all paper.
Typewriter, right?
Yes. And that was awful because I didn't use whiteout well.
Right.
But no, I think the main changes would be the differences of social cultures and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But with technology changes, I mean, I remember the first computer I worked with as a principal was a TRS-80 Radio Shack way back. And gosh, now it's everywhere, and it's in my pocket with my phone. So you can access information, apply for positions, do a lot of things via tech that we couldn't do before. But with that being said, it's the same as it used to be as far as people.
Yeah.
They still have to present themselves well and research a district or their position if they want to be a principal or an AP or a superintendent. They must research it and make sure they're a fit for that.
You bet. Well, we're gonna get into that, but before getting there, I'm just, besides of course having me and I'll throw Kate and Sarah, my two younger sisters, into the mix, having us as your own kids in school as our principal. But what was most memorable for you when you think about your time in almost 50 years in the business?
Well, personally, my most memorable piece would be being selected as Superintendent of the Year in 2006 in the state, being president of IASA. Also being involved with you guys when you graduated from school and being there, and I even helped Kate do its tune at baccalaureate with guitar, and we've done a few tunes together.
I remember my most memorable experience, though, I think, was when I got in the fight in 6th grade and got disciplined by you at school and then at home. But
I thought of that one, but I didn't know if you wanted to hear about that.
That's all right. I actually use that when I'm out talking to kids every once in a while, as well as something not to do. But there you go.
Well, and I recall telling you that you're in trouble here at school, but when you get home, your father's going to have everything you own behind his desk, and you won't see it but one piece at a time.
Well, the line that I remember, and whether this was actually true or not, because that's a long time ago, was that you told me, wait till you You think I was bad? Wait till you see your dad at home. I think that was what I remember most. But there we are.
And some other things. You had nearly a finger cut off in class with two people operating the
Paper cut.
the paper cut.
The reason they've got that protective device on there now, I think I'm part of the reason for that.
Perhaps. And we went to the hospital and had it sewn on. And
yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Good times,
Yeah.
right. But from a leadership perspective, when you reflect on your time as a school leader, district, and also at the building level, if we've got I'm sure we'll have some aspiring leaders listening in on this. What might be some advice that you would give to them as they're contemplating taking on this critical role?
I think that they need to talk to people who are doing it currently, get to know them, ask them questions about it. I recall doing it when I was a teacher. I would occasionally get an opportunity to visit with the principal at Breeze Central High School and talk about challenges and that sort of thing, and what it meant to be a principal. Of course, furthering education and licensure and the whole business. But I think getting support from like this organization, and if it's the superintendent group, so be that. I think they need help with it. IASB sponsors an Aspiring Superintendents Day, and they can register for that, and such as that. So I think it's getting help from those in the role.
Yeah, you bet. What do you think? So you have had a nice long career. What do you think's helped make you be successful?
Your mother.
Good answer. That's right.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. I'm not discounting that. That is absolutely the truth, for sure.
Yes, it is. But with that family, supportive family, friends around who, I think a lot of Roger Hannell, if you recall, he was superintendent at West Pike, and he passed here not long ago, but he was someone that I could talk about anything with in the role.
Yeah, Hank Walton comes to mind, too.
That's right, and he's still going, and he's about. But individuals who you can visit with, I always talked about, I've learned from Roger Hannell, for example, what to do. Yeah. I've learned from others that I won't mention names of what not to do in the role. And you just have to assess your strengths and move forward there and just keep moving along. But your mother had a large portion of all that, and still does.
No doubt, for sure. Well, let's get into the job search process just a little bit here, Dad. And I'll just put in a quick shameless plug for our publication that we've got that lays out probably some of the things we're going to talk about, our school leadership that fits document that members can download from the website. So do want to remind people about this great resource there. So individuals that are watching could be looking for that first principal's job, possibly. We have some principals that might be looking at moving into the superintendency. So one of the things I'd want to cover before we get into just more general things that might cross any position in terms of resume reviews or resume work, development, interview prep, and stuff like that. For those that are interested in the superintendency possibly and are thinking about having to work through a search firm, which is maybe not something they've done previously, when they've applied for a building level position where typically they're working with district office or they're an AP, they may be working directly with the principal. Do you have any thoughts for people, as they're thinking about applying for that superintendent's position that is where the search process is being run by a firm like the School Board Association? What are some rules for etiquette that might be helpful for them? Of, can they reach out to the search firm, or what are some things that they should do to make sure that they're handling that process appropriately?
We believe they should reach out to the search firm. They first need to identify if they want to do it and are they qualified, and then they move forward with where should I apply. And in fact, even if it's the district running the search, they need to follow the instructions of the process and go through that properly. But yes, they could communicate with the search firm and the lead consultant, perhaps of a district that they're interested in. Right. And as I mentioned, I think before we began, approximately half of the searches for superintendents are done by districts. For various reasons. We'd prefer they have a firm do it, even if it's not us, even though we're one of the better ones, as IASB.
No doubt. Absolutely.
And we do approximately half of all those other half in the state, and we have several coming still. But the key to this is for them to do that, reach out, apply properly, follow the instructions, get the information that the district and or firm is looking for, make sure everything's flawless. Unfortunately, we still have some candidates who will not fill things out properly, and that makes me question whether or not they can do the job, because you have to do things thoroughly as a superintendent and the principal.
Yeah, detail matters, right? Especially when you're like filling out a budget or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. If you get numbers backwards, you could be a double loss somewhere. But that's an indicator, too, of us of whether they're thorough or can do it.
Yeah, you bet. So when it comes to making a determination about fit, and that's, we call this document school leadership that fits for a reason, because it's about being a good fit, not only when I think about the district or the school building, whatever it might be, as superintendent or principal, they want to make sure they're bringing in a leader that they think's a good fit, but that position also has to be a good fit for the leader from their perspective, right? Because there's a lot riding on it. They're likely moving their family there. They're probably going to have maybe their own kids be a part of that district. They got to just make sure that things work for them overall. So, what is it that's going to be important for these applicants, these prospective candidates, to be doing to make sure that they've done their due diligence?
Well, and if they're, for one thing too, if they're moving up through the system, which occurs, they know the place and they know whether they fit or not. But if they're going to apply for a location principal or superintendent or even assistant superintendent and move, they need to make sure that their significant others are involved in that process. They need to evaluate their own strengths. When I did it last at Quincy, I put a line down the paper and put yes or no on one side, yes on one side, no's on the other, and you had some reasons to do it and the reasons not to, but the reasons to do it way outweighed the no's, if you follow what I mean.
Absolutely. And the geese are out here honking. We're going to power through, by the way. We'll just...
I'll speak louder. That's all right.
It's okay. We'll just go through it. Yeah, you bet. You bet.
Yeah, but I think that the key to that is that they then decide if they want to apply to a certain position, follow, like I've said, I'll repeat that over and over, the process properly. There's a lot of steps in it. With us, we have several.
What do those include?
They would include going to the online AppleTrack system and applying online, uploading their letter of application. Brent Clark tells about this story well. Make sure that their name of the district they're applying to is on the letter that they send to them, because that can occur not.
Especially if you're applying to several positions.
You need to make absolutely sure. And of course, we watch that if we're doing a search. We catch it occasionally. 4 people. We shouldn't have to, but we do. But making sure that everything is up to date as far as transcripts, their resume, and as far as resume, not have gaps in the resume. Explain any times out of the mix, because if it's a 2-year period, there might be a question as to what were you doing then, when it's not.
So just as a concrete example, if you were to work into a position from like 2014 to 2017 and then jump to 2020 to present, and what's going on in that, which could easily be explained for whatever reason, but in a cover letter or whatever, but it's important to know.
The key is to put a time frame on the resume and then identify what it was. It could be you left education and went back to school full-time, or for a young lady, she might have had family to raise, and the gentleman too. I mean, whatever that is.
So, you bet. So as we've kind of dancing around the resume here a little bit, let's just dig into that a little more. What are some other recommendations that you have, when you're looking at resumes? What are some things that you want to see from a content perspective? What types of accomplishments or things are important, as well as just the aesthetics of the resume? What are the ones that maybe stand out to you?
Ones that I believe are best are clear, succinct, easily read, not extra stuff in it like pictures, sideline, colors, different sayings, all that. Just put it on a white piece of paper and start with your goal or objective. And sometimes they'll say, I want to become the X of this district. But in my view, the resume is the resume. It's your story, and it should be doable for any opening you have. And so you begin with that. You begin put down your education, your licensure and certifications, positions you've held, and a brief description of those. Any areas that you've been a leader in community organizations or professional organizations. And you list some references on it. And those are references who know that you're applying somewhere, who you let them know that you're applying. and that you want to list them as a reference, don't let that be a surprise to them. Right. I didn't know you were, and so I call a reference and they say, well, I didn't know I was a reference for him.
Especially if it's your boss, right?
Well, you want to be careful maybe with that. You actually should have support of your boss. Yeah. Now, if you're moving from a superintendent's role to another, that's sometimes a little more difficult because you have a board of 7 who could be of issue with a person leaving. Right. But your current superintendent, if you're a principal in a location, for example, and you want to be a superintendent elsewhere, really should be a helping hand in all of that. Absolutely.
So one of the questions I get a lot when I'm reviewing resumes, or people really try to compress their resume when they're applying to a principalship, usually in my case, they'll try to get it condensed down to just one page. Yeah. And one of the things that I offer up to them often is for a more executive level position like a principalship, it's really okay to have 2, 3+ pages. You don't want it to go on and on forever, but
well, as if you're in it longer, it will go on and on. Correct. Mine's 4.
Yeah.
And because I was several places.
Right.
And it does truly tell your story, and you want it to do so. You don't want it.
But you don't have to be limited to one page.
That's what I'm going to get right to that, and don't go font 9 just to get it down to one page. Right. So 12 font, you can do the boundaries, the margins in such a way that it can extend it. I wouldn't put it on one page and then about 1/8 of a next page. Yeah. Try to fill 2 then, or 1.5 certainly. Yeah. So, and the geese do have something to weigh in on.
They do. They're awful. They're awful talkative today. That's for sure.
So that's key, is to not let it. Don't let the one page thing. And I get that question a lot too. Yeah. Should it be one page? Well, make it whatever it needs to be to tell who you are.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I like you framing it up as it's. And I say this often. It's interesting you phrase it this way, because I share the same thing, that it's people telling their story. Mm-hmm. And the way that I talk about that is that it's, this is the first entry point unless you're applying from within. If you're coming from outside of the district, it's their first instance of being able to get a viewpoint of who you are as a person, and they're trying to create a vision of you in their mind's eye about you being a leader who identifies needs, can cast vision for how to address those needs and work collectively or collaboratively with others, to develop strategies to address those needs, and then hopefully come with some great outcomes, and if you have some data to back that up, that's even better. So if there's ways of framing up leadership and the work that's been done, that's what you want to get done and articulate on your resume. What I sometimes also get the question of is if these individuals that are applying for that first principalship, or it could be the first superintendency, and they've not necessarily done that work. Right. So they say, what do I do? And I say, well, you lead, you take opportunities to lead from where you are. Mm-hmm. The first place they can do that best is within the position that they hold. Even teachers in the classroom may not think that they can demonstrate leadership, but that's sometimes the best place to get it done.
The key to, in my view, to that is that they should know what it means to be a principal or to be a superintendent. They should learn that. Observe others, be around them, see what the position actually is. An example I would give is that we'll have first-year superintendent candidates talk about, I don't have finance background. Mm-hmm. Well, they need to learn that, right. And they need to get with people who are doing it and show that, then demonstrate that they have learned from them. Yeah. They can't say, well, I don't know. I mean, that's not a good plan, is to tell you don't know.
Yeah, there are a few things you might be able to say, I don't know, budgeting around if you're looking to be a superintendent or a school business official.
Well, you can say that I haven't had much experience perhaps with it, which is the case, but that I've worked with my current business manager, I've worked with my current superintendent, and actually do those things. I mentioned Roger Hannell again, that he would give me the go-ahead to do the reports. Yeah. He didn't want to do them anyway, so I did it. And like transportation report, the attendance report, all those types of things. But
well, and that's the benefit of having someone that is wanting to pour into you and invest in you and do that, which is taking that opportunity when it's presented. So let's pivot on beyond the resume. Let's talk about the interview. Getting ready for that, and then just during the interview, you've obviously been a part of a few for yourself in moving into positions or applying for positions. You've also interviewed a few people over time as well. So, what comes top of mind as good advice for people as they're looking at?
As a candidate for a district that you may not know about, whether even if it's principalship or superintendent's position, do research of that district, learn what their strengths are and areas of concern that might show up. I don't suggest they be critical of somewhere they're going.
Or where they're coming from.
Either way. Right. That's fact. In fact, I know that if a candidate goes to a board to interview and they complain about their past, I've had that occur as a superintendent in interviewing for principals. Someone came in and just said, I couldn't stand my other superintendent. Right. Well, I knew I might be next about that. So meaning the board will just keep it still. Don't tell. What you don't say is sometimes smarter than what you do say. But the key is to anticipate questions. There's ways to do that. We counsel boards on how to ask questions, how to structure an interview of a board of 7. Sometimes candidates, if they're in the final round, will interview with community members and parents and staff. And it's not really a decision-making process, but the board then gets input on that, so that can occur. They also need to for sure interview for the position they're taking. I had a principal interview well as a principal, but not for the superintendent job that he was applying. And a board president said to me, if we were hiring a principal, that person would be it. Right. But they didn't interview as a superintendent. They didn't research it, look at that. They just spoke. You can speak about things you have. Right. The other key to that is not to continually quote the name of the district that you're coming out of. If it's somewhere, just say in my history or in my experience, not in where I am now, and name it, keep going.
And how awesome it is, and they say, why are you wanting to leave?
They, in their mind, after you leave, say, that's where you ought to stay if they think so much, because it's a belief on a board's part of how you're going to feel about there. Right.
Yes, well, because you're coming in to be a true member of the community, right? Exactly. And that's what they're looking for.
We also tell boards that these candidates, and you mentioned earlier about you're looking at a fit to make sure it fits you. We tell them that the candidates are interviewing them as well. Yeah. And if a board is misbehaving, which occasionally occurs, we let candidates know. What about this? And they need to be aware of what they might be getting into.
Well, that's another benefit, I think, if you're applying for that superintendency that has a district working with a firm, is knowing that the firm can sometimes be coaching the board along about how they should be handling themselves, and also maybe educating them on how they should be acting moving forward as well, to be working with the best people.
We have, in fact, found boards who are divided. After they've gone through a search process and all 7 of them agree this is our new superintendent, for example, they come together. Yeah. Which is a good thing. Absolutely. Need to be.
Yeah, well, they have a little ownership, obviously,
they have a lot.
In that one person that they've selected for the job, no doubt about it.
But it is a different process of interviewing with 7 board members than it is with a superintendent or a principal interviewing AP or an HR person interviewing them.
What are just some general forms of etiquette during the interview process, Dad, that you talk about, like coming into the interview, shaking hands, going out, thank you notes? I mean, we hear a lot about some things like that.
I think it is important to greet them, look them in the eye, shake the hand of each person who's your interviewer, then sit down and just follow their plan. To speak about yourself, know what you know of the district. But I mean, one of the first questions will be, why are you interested in this position? Right. You need to know why that is.
And then why should we hire you?
They'll ask that, and that you can do the job. Sometimes candidates will tell interviewers that I'm the best choice. Well, I caution against that, because you might know you are, but don't make it known that strongly that you're the absolute best. The gift of God's green earth or something like that.
You bet. Yeah. What about, with regards back to just handling the relationship with board members, again, thinking about this with individuals, particularly interviewing for the superintendency. What about if you're working with a search firm, should the communication stay with the search firm? Is there opportunities?
Yes, no. You should not contact board members individually if you're applying for a position there. And if it's not done by a firm, you contact the person designated as the contact.
Yeah.
So even in our brochures, we strongly recommend and want them to follow not contacting board members individually. Occasionally that can happen, and it appears as if the candidate is trying to go around the tree behind the door to get in further. So that follows the plan of what that process should look like. Also be careful in a superintendent's position of contacting community members. Right. You again don't want it to be so that you're trying to subvert the process and outrun other candidates by who you know. It isn't the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, handling it appropriately and having the right balance of confidence and humility, I think, through this obviously is pretty important. And I think the way people handle themselves through the process in those ways obviously will make a difference, because while it might in the instance help get them into the position down the road, it might subvert their leadership too,
yes.
Right? It might undercut them, and they don't want to do that to themselves. Let's move past the interview. Talk a little bit about that time where in this resource that we've got, we talk about it there's basically three ways that it could go. You as the individual may figure out that this isn't the right fit and pull out of the process. Number two, the board may say you're not the right fit, or the superintendent, if they're hiring as a principal, or whoever is involved in that process. And then the third is you got the job. So let's talk about each of those. If or when you figure out that a position is not the right fit, and I've been in that situation actually myself. Well. So how do you handle that appropriately?
Well,
because it can feel like a breakup. And it may be one of those situations where it's not a good fit.
I interviewed with a board. Yeah. I won't give a location.
Right.
But the minute I left that interview, I knew that this wasn't going to be something I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So we slept on it. Your mom and I talked about it.
Right.
Next morning, I decided to pull out. Yeah. And just did that because I knew that it wasn't going to be a fit. So I did that by calling the individual who was leading the search with that particular firm at the time.
Mm-hmm. So don't text, don't email. Well,
no, talk to him personally.
Yeah.
Don't put I wouldn't email anything like that. I would just talk to him personally, and then when you hang up, unless they recorded it,
right.
Which I don't think so. Yeah. But I would just let them know as soon as you knew that you wanted to pull away. Mm-hmm. We don't like to see individuals pull away right at the last minute after being the final candidate offered the position.
Right.
Had that occur twice with the same individual. Mm-hmm. I may have shared this story when we've talked before, in the sense that the person got down to the finals, meaning 2 or 3, interviewed, they offered him the job, went home, talked to his spouse. She wouldn't want to go. Yeah. He should probably know that ahead of time.
Before even applying, right?
Yes. A year later, the same thing happened again, and I finally communicated with him that if you've done this twice, you do it again, we're not.
Right. Well, then not only then are you putting yourself in bad position with those districts, obviously, and the chances of maybe, because it may not be the right fit today, but who knows what it could be down the road.
That's right.
You don't want to burn bridges.
Yeah. In any fashion.
Well, for sure, but you especially don't want to do it with a search firm who is out there trying to put you in a position to possibly secure a job anywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure understand that.
Right.
What about, if the board says you're not the right fit? How do you just make sure to handle that appropriately?
And you mean if they say that to you?
Well, meaning
they
if
just don't
the board or the superintendent is someone applying for a principalship, they just call and say, thank you for applying and being a part of the process, but we're going in a different direction.
Well, and I personally, what I've done with that is this: we'll have a board interview 6 candidates. Mm-hmm. After the final interview, they decide on who they want to call back. Then it's my task to call those and let them know that they're not being called back. Yeah. Of course, their initial question and thought in their mind is, what have I done wrong here? And it's not that, it's about the pool they're with. Mm-hmm. Please continue to apply.
Right.
You interviewed, I get feedback if I have it from the board and tell them. Mm-hmm. But ultimately then, whenever a board interviews the final 2 or 3, then they call the ones back that they're not going to have.
But
they usually,
thing to do.
It is. They should do it themselves. Mm-hmm. And the first stage, though, I can manage with them.
Right.
They need to first, we tell boards this, and it's kind of, board members may be watching this, so this is advice to them.
Sure.
Don't tell all the candidates that they're not your choice until you've really secured one.
Yeah, like have a signed contract?
Well, maybe not quite that far, but close, yes.
Understand that. But I think that is good advice for anybody like here at IPA, when we have people applying for positions, and I tell them when they come in, if you've taken the time to come in and talk with us and interview with us up to that point, you're going to get a phone call from me one way or the other.
That's
Whether
right.
you get the job or don't get the job, I'm going to call you and do that because it's just the right thing to do.
Well, and I'll explain a little bit further about our screening process that we use. I think others do it, other firms do it as well. We will independently screen, let's say we have 30 applications. We screen those on our own, 2 or 3 of us, come together in a phone call or a Zoom meeting and talk about who do we want to advance to the next level, which is then us interviewing them personally on now Zoom. And then we together decide which 6 or so out of the 10 or 12 will be advanced to the board. I call them either way and let them know. And some of those aren't going to make it through, others do. And the same type of conversation about nothing that you've done wrong, you just continue. Now, if there is some glaring, and I've had that, if their documents are just not good or everything's just not accurate or well-written. I'm not an English instructor, but we have a person on staff who's a former literature teacher, English teacher, Trish Vineyard. I've had her review my stuff before, and there's red lines all over the thing. So, but we help each other with all of that. But the point is that they just simply need to take it as it is and go forward with that.
You bet. So then for those that get the call that they want, that they got the job, so they're
Be prepared to say yes or no.
Right.
But if the board, for example, will say, we want you to become our next superintendent, that's our plan, contingent on a visit to your location, site visit, and contract negotiations. So if none of that works out, if something doesn't work out, then they have it out.
So how do people handle that? You mentioned, especially if it's a current superintendent, but even in the case of a principal that's sitting in kind of this waiting period, and they're trying to determine when's going to be the right point to notify their current employer.
They should do that prior to their final interview with the current employer.
Okay.
Sitting superintendent as well, because whoever that employer is, that board's going to make contact then too. We keep things as confidential as we can.
Yeah, but education's a small world, and they have that written on their resume where they are currently, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. So we ask boards not to make any communication with any references until after they've identified their final 2 or 3. And then they can make the calls. But then let the candidates know they're going to do that as well.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, and I always advise individuals contemplating, building leadership position, whether it's someone seeking that first AP or principal's position or principal moving on, as early in the process that they feel comfortable, they really need to be talking with their boss about it.
Yes.
Because more so than even board members, superintendents are a tight circle because of groups like the Illinois Association of School Administrators. Same thing with principals. You got IPA, where people are getting together and talking, and so you've got to kind of work from the presumption that these individuals could be communicating with one another, just even in a really just a conversationalist type of setting. So have to be careful with some of that stuff. So as much as people can be forthright and get that. Plus, they probably want those supervisors to be references for them moving forward,
That's
which
right.
is really
That's
the
key.
best one. Yeah, no doubt. And then I would also recommend that people be communicating with ISA and IPA to help with that contract.
Right.
We want everybody to have a contract, which of course for superintendents has always typically been the case. And due to work that Brian's done in the association overall, we've got our model contract, and we see more and more principals annually that either have a single or multi-year contract.
Well, and Brian here, as well as Chad Watkins at IASA, they know the firms that would maybe have the other side of the contract. They know them, they know their contracts, especially Chad Watkins probably because there are fewer of those. Brian works with probably 5,000 to 6,000 of them
Yes,
over
that's right.
total time, whereas Chad may have, there are 800 and some members that he
Of
works with,
superintendents.
superintendent organization, right. But it's key to have that help, and there's no charge for it except to be an IPA or an IASA member.
That's right. Yep.
And they write that in the contract to do it.
We would be happy to help them do that for sure, Last thing here, Dad, on this topic. So somebody's hired what are good first steps for people as they're entering into that new position that they've taken on, and what do they need to be doing?
What they need to be doing is exiting strong wherever they are. And even if it's internal, finish what you're doing currently strong.
Yeah.
In a good way. Don't walk, you can't do it if it's internal and walk out the door and then come in a month later.
Right.
But when you leave a location, leave it in good order. Don't burn that bridge, because you may need to go back someday doing something else.
Yeah.
And
you don't want that to get to be talked forward to the new place either.
Right. Both ways. You're very complimentary both ways, and make sure that it's known that you appreciate the opportunity to move forward. You've appreciated being where you've been, with whatever that is.
Well, and I give that advice even more strongly, even when it's not ending as they would prefer, to just get out there as best as possible, so that they can then start on the best foot forward with the next opportunity.
And that does occur. There will be, perhaps could be times where it's not ending well. In fact, this time of year is when we're going to see changes made probably to that, with the March time and the changes in the staffing laws as far as what you need to do. I've got a little bit of that going on already in our work. And the key is that they still hang on to it, finish strong, be above it. It may be hard, but it's the right thing to do, and it also will speak well of you.
So they finish up well where they are. Then what about as they take those first steps into the new position?
It, of course, depends on the position it is. If it's superintendent, they need to visit with board members individually, find out some of their key, what do you want to occur here, letting them know full well that they're not your boss individually, the board is together, and you educate them, get to know them well outside of school maybe, go lunch, breakfast.
Right.
You're not their buddy friend maybe, but you need to be able to get along with each one. And then if you communicate with a board member, communicate with all of them in the same way. But to start, you'll want to talk with that board as a superintendent of what are the needs here now. You probably should do some research ahead of time by reading board minutes. To see what the hot topics are, and there are hot topics.
No doubt. Start reading the newspaper, watching the news, all of
it'll pop up
for sure, no doubt. Well, and similarly with the principalship, we advise, of course, be talking with your superintendent, having clarity around what their vision is for the district and how you as a building leader can be supportive of that, and then plan on spending a lot of time just talking with teachers one-on-one.
That's right.
And community members, key community members, and working to find out who those individuals
And
are.
as the superintendent changes occur, IASA has a transition worksheet, which I think you may have.
We do. We have an entry plan that we've put together
Yeah,
that
and that's helped
to
me a
help with
couple
that.
times.
You bet. No, I highly advise people to take a look at that.
And it gives advice on how to leave somewhere and how to get in, how to start.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So you're about to wrap up here at the end of this fiscal year, June 30. This will be the end of 50 years and be done with your time at ISB. So
Yep.
it's been a great.
In fact, driving here, I almost drove across the street instead of here.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, for those that haven't been into Springfield, where the IPA office is, we are right across the street from the Springfield office of the School Board Association. They also have an office up in the Lombard community as well. But as I understand it, as far as the executive search for department is concerned at ISB, you'll be passing the baton. You mentioned Trish Vineyard earlier. She'll be leading
Yes,
the team there.
Dr. Vineyard will be the director of the search department. Al Mulby is a consultant in that region up around Chicago. They both are in the suburbs of Chicago. We have a consultant in Jim Helton, who is in the Metro East area, Glen Carbon. We have a consultant in Tim Buss, who is in the Wabash Valley, down at Mount Carmel. And we have Dave Love, who's in Petersburg. And we have a new person who is Vic Zimmerman, who is just beginning with us.
Right.
So, it's a change.
Yeah.
Been a lot of change in across the street here in the last 15 years that I've been at it. But and Brian Schwartz asked me one day. I saw him here delivering, I think, a pair of socks to one of your kids, left at our house at Christmas. What I was going to do now that I stopped, and I said, whatever Joyce says. He said, that's a good answer.
That's right.
I said, well, I've been doing it part-time, now it's going to be full-time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure already got a list already.
One other thing I have to mention on a personal note,
Yeah.
Jason, I'll never forget one of the first times I was over there and you were here, because you began in '06, but I started in '08. But when I was there and here, and we went to lunch over here at Pizza Hut, and I sat down and we had lunch, and I just mentioned that who'd have ever thought in 1974 you were born,
Right.
that we'd be here now. And this same thing today. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's been a
It is.
good run, and congratulations on 50 years and everything like
Appreciate
that. You bet. It's a lot of fun to have you here, too.
I was 10 when I started.
I'm gonna get into that part of it. Well, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of IPA, here with my dad, Tom Leahy, who is finishing up 50 years in the profession, most recently now as Director of the Executive Search Department there at the Illinois Association of School Boards, and just grateful for your time and talking through some of your experiences with the job search process for both building and school leaders, because you've been on all sides of that now over a long period of time, which has been good.
At one point, I was a board member.
Oh, that's
And I also was on a negotiating team for teachers once. Before you could have any tools we didn't have strike rights then. But yes, I've been through most of it.
Yeah, you bet. Well, you've got a couple months left, so if anybody wants to give you a call or send you an email, you can get you at tleahy@isb.com.
That's right.
For a few more months, and after that, Dr. Vineyard and, of course, the whole team there would be happy to.
And I didn't mention Mary Torgler. She's our hub of the wheel. Yeah. She's full-time and our administrative assistant. Yeah. She actually is the go-to person at mtorgler@iasb.com. And if individuals want to be on the distribution of our emails of vacancies, they should let her know that.
Okay, very good. Yep, that's good advice for sure. And we'll make sure in the show notes that we'll put a link to this resource rather, where you can download that and just see even more detail to the various parts of the search process that Dad and I talked about here. As always, if there's anything that IPA can do for you, don't hesitate to give us a call or check us out on the web at ilprinciples.org. Take care.